Hello, I am Radagast, and welcome to the Mystic and the Moose number. Oh well, the next one. I'll have the I'll have the number when it grows up. I think it might be six. Yeah. Okay. Oh well. Hello, Raksha. I'm gonna unmute you, and welcome to show number six of the Mystic and the Moose.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm well. And just enjoying being alive. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too. It's been kind of a interesting day.
Mm-hmm.
A long day for me. How about you? How's your day been?
Well, it's been great because we had rehearsal tonight, Uncle Butchie, and the rehearsals are just becoming something really to look forward to, and we have our first little house gig October 14th. So that's, I guess, 2 Saturdays away, or not, like not tomorrow, but 2 more Saturdays. I think that's when the 14th is. I know I'll be there. I do keep track of the days as they happen.
I don't always. I just know that sometimes the sun comes up and I'm awake, and sometimes the moon's out when I'm awake. And sometimes I have to look at the calendar.
I sometimes do not know if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, because there's a little bit different feel to the weekend. But I've been on Fridays thinking it's Saturday. I've been in Saturdays thinking it's Sunday. Mondays thinking it's Sunday.
Good times.
Yeah,
Good times.
that doesn't really trouble me. Because I always keep appointments. As long as appointments get kept and I'm on time, and those situations differ. It's funny, like they had to make adjustments for me here in Floyd because I showed up on time, and they go, "Oh, we're expecting Floyd time." I go, "Well, what is this plastic thing called Floyd time?" But I knew it.
Yes.
I said, "Nah, I'm a little old school. I just show up on time, make it easy." But anyway, we're getting off subject. We do have
Well, in a way, not. I mean, one of the constant themes that we talk about is the actual relativity of time and what is time. Time, past, present, future, or is it all happening all at once? And the construct of time. So, just, I guess, a little inside dialogue on our connection with time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I do is if I have an appointment scheduled in, let's call it, clock time, date time, whatever that stuff is, appointment time. Then for me, it's like I almost use them like coordinates. It's almost like a sense of rhythm, like in that timing where I now know that, on a space-time thing, I have to have my physical body at a certain point. And in many cases, these are appointments of maybe four. So like I know what transition times are and how I have to move my body through space to be in a car, we're here or whatever. And it's just kind of a rhythm. But I use them as coordinates. I don't really live in time. It's just when I do have to enter time to meet somebody, that it's like a coordinate. It's like having latitude and longitude.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's a little bit of let's magical power type stuff, where I figure if I can't move my body through space and time, like actually be able to will myself to be somewhere when we on an agreement, then the rest of my magic might be raggedy. So for me, being on time is like one of my magical statements.
Well, and why I kind of paused there for a moment is because we kind of started this evening with the agreement that we would start at a certain time and then check in with each other on how much more time we would need.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed to coalesce right at the perfect time for both of us.
Yeah. You and I had an agreement to begin dialoguing about coming together at a certain time, and we showed up at that dialogue time.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there ensued when we would begin a pre-show, and then the pre-show, of course. But so again, to me, it's all in the agreement. So our, you know, the agreement, the way we left it was we would begin a dialogue at a set time, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would get the show started, you know, recording when we were ready.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but nobody was really waiting on it. It was perfect. I mean, as you said, 5 minutes before you were available was prior. It was only 5 minutes prior that I had taken the breath to let me know I was available.
Mm-hmm. And what I like about that is when you set out with intention and you are able to come together in a connection, you really don't have to worry about waiting on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you keep an open channel, an open dialogue, you start to grow this energetic connection, a healthy energetic connection with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to sync up. And that also kind of connects with something you were saying last night, where you said that you could actually feel me.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to do with the stream last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
But after you spend some time with someone, again, that word time,
mm-hmm.
You start to build this rapport. And if you invest good things into that connection, good energy, good resource, and you nurture it, you nourish it, and it is a good connection on both sides. It has to start with health. Over that time, you build that connection. It's like two individual trees starting to intermingle their root systems with each other.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And so they, that's why when last night you said you could feel that specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
About me, it's because we are sharing information. We are connected. Like the ether field.
Mm-hmm.
And that also transfers over to, like, again, tonight, when we said that we would meet up we would start the dialogue at a certain time, right when you had taken that breath. Okay, I'm at that place. I'm ready. I finished this one thing that I pour a lot of energy into. It's a passion. It's more than a spark.
Mm-hmm.
It's a consumption of energy. You have to kind of sit back and recharge a little bit, so you had to sit back and you had to take that time to recharge, refresh, and you had gone, oh, okay, I'm running around here like a mad chicken with my head cut off. I actually had to sit down for a moment and take a breath and like pet Hera and smoke a cigarette and like cry for a minute. And so I was ready, and I sat down, and I had sat down and took the breath and went, okay, it's time. I can finally make the connection. So mine was a little more frenzied, but not in a bad way. And we made that connection. And it was in that harmonious time space where it wasn't that one was waiting and waiting and waiting.
Not at all.
And again, that's such a beautiful thing. I'm really enjoying this, the blossoming of what you and I have here, and I want to speak life into that and love into that.
Thank you. Same here.
So.
What was interesting is because I had such a great rehearsal, what my real problem was grounding. I was like in this kind of muse fairy, not quite ecstatic, but I was like floating, and I needed to get my feet on the ground. And so I'm just sitting here trying to compose myself, but I'm just kind of like frothing. And then finally, like I said, there was like, I think this is, and I just spontaneously like had this deep breath. And it was like I say, exhales, like my feet went clunk. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now I can be in front of a camera and have some coherence. It was like, inviting this little, before I was just too ungrounded. And it was really interesting because, again, we were in communication. I was sitting at my computer for much of it, not all of it. And just saying, well, I'm not ready yet, and I hope he isn't. And, it really was. It was a good demonstration of just being in sync. So, okay, so you came on last night onto your show, and we had already decided it was going to be, more lighthearted.
Yeah.
A kiki, as you called it.
Oh, yeah, we had a kiki.
And apparently that's going to mean something to certain people.
Yes. Not a kai. We had a kiki.
Right. And so you came out, again, I knew I was expecting you to be in good spirits, but you came, it really was good. I mean, I was watching and I was going, oh, wow, this is good to see Raksha like this. But I'm just like,
sorry, Hare is excited that Daddy's home.
That's good. But I said, something felt artificial, but the real word was propped up. There, it was like the show must go on. And there was like, that we had already selected the first song. So the first song was going to play, and you were playing the first song fine. But like I said, there was just something about it. And then later on you had shared with me, that you had to do certain kind of energetic techniques to create the proper mood, but it was a little bit pushed into place. And it was just really interesting because it was, after the show that we sit around our little campfire and share intel. And when I said that about you, and then you shared, and I was just like, just confirming again how even the most subtle of things, because of the connecting, you can't quite identify it, but something is not, there's a disharmonic in there. There's something that just isn't 100% real.
And given time, the more time we spend together and the more time we sync, you're going to be able to identify what that is when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hera, shush.
That's the value of the intel sharing, because you get to take that piece that's kind of raw and undefined, almost like a lump of clay. And then as you get more intel, you can kind of shape it and think, and that is, that sharing that, and again, as I'm going to start using the word campfire a few times here, wink, wink. Hello, Vern. This all makes sense later on down the line. So anyway, so that was operative. So our topic, or at least our starting topic, I believe was an interest. You had shared with me something that I was introduced through books and, of course, a PBS series by Joseph Campbell, where the hero's journey was introduced. So it kind of entered this lexicon, the entering kind of a mythic way of moving through life, attaching yourself into mythic energies, archetypal energies. So the whole concept of the hero's journey got started. Now, then you tell me that, you following a decade or so after myself through a school system, that you had a semester dedicated to the hero's journey.
At least, yes.
And how you had written, you had a final paper to write, and that you, despite the fact that you had given it, had composed a great work, paper, the fact that you dissented from the narrative that they were trying to construct about the hero's journey and how you saw it, and then how, and the importance I think it is, because school is programming. And to take something as important as the hero's journey and make it what it isn't. And I thought, and I know that was something that was near and dear to your heart, and certainly near and dear to my heart. And I thought it'd make a good conversation, because the hero's journey is an important one, but it has to be understood. And a big part of the New Age problem are things taken out of context. And I think the hero's journey is one of them.
Well, this kind of sprung up from the dialogue that we were having about people have been conned into waiting for, I know, calm down, Mariah, the hero to come along. And so it generally, as individuals in a society, we don't move to action. We wait for someone else. Someone else will come along and do something. Mm-hmm. We've been conditioned to forget the power of community, the power of individuals coming together and doing what really can only be done by a group coming together. The power of community, the power of unity. And that is what led us into that hero's journey conversation. So I wanted to give a little bit of context into the dialogue. And so what I had written was the hero's journey from the perspective of the hero with companions, that it wasn't just a solo journey, this one person taking on all these dangerous, horrendous creatures and these impossible obstacles, save one example that you had given with Hercules. But that was very contextualized. Mm-hmm. It was a very specific reason that was a solo task. And so when I had handed in this work, which it was very specific that although I had written the best paper in the class as far as grammar and spelling, and I had written the best piece of work, I was getting the worst grade in class because I had not completed the assignment as far as giving it through the point of view as the one hero.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these stories, the Odyssey, is the main one that we focused on, but most certainly not the only one, is not a story of just one person going out and doing all of these mighty tasks that to us mere mortals seems like insurmountable feats.
Mm-hmm.
I call bullshit. I called bullshit then, and I told you what I ended up doing. I have claws. But we as a society, I called bullshit then, I'm calling bullshit now. We as a society really need to wake up to, or re-wake up to, that understanding that we are the hero, and we are going through that journey together, whether we like it the fuck or not.
Mm-hmm. It's but I think it's part of that singular hero journey focus, because again, like a really good example of another hero is Jason. But what do we really know of Jason and the Argonauts?
Mm-hmm.
And he had companions and other kind of heroes with him. So, but I think because school is shaping us for the kind of people they want coming out the other end, and how they want them behaving in society, this all glory for one, I think, is part of what is trying to be inculcated. Because if you can get people looking to take all the glory, it feeds into all kinds of fuckery. Because if you can still take all the glory for yourself at one level, you can also take all the money, all the everything. That whole concept of personal self-achievement alone from where you arose, and even taking away from the inspiration that it was the community and the preservation of their lifestyle that usually drove the hero to action. And I think another layer that kind of builds on why people wait for the hero is because, again, most of, at least in a civilized society, there's usually one flavor of an Abrahamic religion or other. All of them have a Messiah. All of them have a salvation aspect to them by the special elect person. So there's a certain undercurrent from them, even if we think we've left things, but there's still that early thing about somebody is going to save us. And it can be taken out of the religious milieu and put it into the secular. And it doesn't, for the people who are shaping, for the social engineers, it doesn't matter where you get that waiting for somebody else to do what needs to be done. When it's really obvious that something needs to be done and things need to be fixed, and that collectively we could probably fix it, but the program says, no, a special person will arise.
If we look through history, it is the main religions that have been the most long-standing. But it goes back further. The main religions have been the ones that have been able to, I guess, carry the sword the furthest through.
Mm-hmm.
Have been the most effective in creating an oligarchy,
mm-hmm.
in that sense. but there have been I don't know if I want to call them businesses or syndicates of all sorts that have slapped a religious ideology, a philosophical belief set, a nihilistic set, to meet these kind of ends. But you are correct. For the last span of thousands of years, it has been, I guess, the final three. And it's almost as if we're in we're in an engagement of who's going to win. Whose flying spaghetti monster is better than the others. And there is a lot of coin behind all of this to win. There's a lot of power to win. And it's very, it can be very scary to think about. It can be very frustrating. It can be very overwhelming. And a lot of people just choose not to look at it because of those reasons. There's a certain point where people turn off to that awareness and decide, no, someone else will get it. You're muted.
I think one of the reasons that awareness is avoided, I think, because it actually wants to take you in a direction different than the one you're usually going in. And that can be very problematic. It could be practically problematic. And then for people who really need the approval of others to know what color shirt to wear, it becomes particularly problematic to be aware of a direction that isn't a direction everybody else is going in. So, it's practical and it has, psychological implications. And so it's just kind of like, all right, it's kind of the smoke alarm went off. I'm burning too much incense. We can ignore it now. There's no fire here.
I kind of look at the last 20, almost 20 years, knowing that since I've been in school, it's been a prerequisite in most of the United States and a lot of other countries that seniors go through the hero's journey. And it's taught from the individualistic mindset, the disconnection of community and teamwork. I remember when I was younger in school, there was an emphasis on teamwork. There was an emphasis on working together. There was an emphasis on team building and playing well with others. And then I remember there was it was almost like day and night, like a switch went off, and then it became very much divisive. And there are these lists and these categories and these things, and you have to fit in these molds, and you are ostracized. Everyone is ostracized based off of these things. Even the cool kids are ostracized because of, you know, one reason or another, maybe just because they're the cool kids. And it was just one reason or another to divide people. And the way that the model that teaching was done was individual, no working together. You don't sit at desks where you look at people, you sit in your own seat with your own little mini desk. You can't look at someone else, you can't talk to someone else. It just, every school that I went to talked about no bullying, and teachers would walk by kids getting beaten up. So we're being taught one thing, we're being shown and modeled another thing. The things that we're being force-fed in the classrooms are all backwards and fucked up. The civics books, and I compared the civics books just as a rabbit hole. And my senior civics class did not teach the proper Bill of Rights, and a few other very important things. And I compared it to the civics book from when my mother was in school. And it definitely, my civics book from when I went to high school is definitely lacking. And when I realized that they were misrepresenting the Bill of Rights, I definitely rose a stink about it, which got me in a lot of trouble. But our school systems are programming our children, and not only are the schools getting better and better at the dumbification of our youth, and that's pure and simply what it is, but they're getting better and better at othering the others, creating, and it really does come, what I see, a majority from these school systems.
Universities. I mean, it really seems to come together at universities.
So it's one of those kind of, you know, we can identify a problem. What can we do about it? And that's the challenging part. There's a lot of things for me that I can look at something and go, oh, that's an easy solution. For me, that's an easy solution. For someone else, it might be a little complex. But a lot of things, I played Tetris a lot, I'll just say that. Or maybe, you know, I had a schizophrenic mother, or one of my mother's personalities had schizophrenia. I don't know which. So a lot of just different stuff makes sense to me that wouldn't make sense to other people. But this thing is so insidious and so dirty. That I really do struggle on how people even bite it. The idea that we can look at the system as it's ran, knowing that it's teaching what it's teaching, the individual hero's journey. People that are aware of it, that have kids that are in the system, and then sit back and go, oh, I recognize the problem, but someone else will come by and take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a masochistic system.
The word pretend might start showing up here. People who pretend to be one thing when they're another. That's certainly the worst kind of pretending. Out and out deceptive pretending. And then there are other forms. But right now, I would say we're at an epidemic and crisis of pretense or pretending. We have politicians who pretend to represent us and look out for our interests. They pretend to tell us the truth. So, and then when you have a school system that pretends to educate rather than inculcate, you have a financial system that pretends that it has any value outside of the spell woven around it, and the fact that it is enough people have fallen for it that they can still get bodies to move, which is what currency is usually used to do. So there's all this pretending going on, and then we come into our communities and people are pretending to be channelers or shamans because they took a 7-day course and they have a piece of paper signed by somebody who wrote a book on shamanism. And, it goes. And so I just feel that part of the reason.
Don't forget the plastic rattle.
And, yeah, the plastic rattle. Oh, a cluster of them. I think it was a few. It was almost like a bouquet of rattles. Plastic rattles. And, but so one of the problems is perception. Who is seeing through the pretense, and if we as a group are many of us living in pretense, does that kind of cancel out our ability to see pretense in others? At least until we begin that beginning awakening, where at least you project what's inside you on others and see it. But pretending is probably more important at creating this system of smoke and mirrors than many people have pondered. And it's just like charities pretending to be charitable rather than fundraisers. Places promoting democracy while they, NGOs that pretend to be promoting democracy, and basically what it is they promote political instability until the right person is in that seat. A great pretender. So I've said most of it here. I guess it's time for me to let you have your thoughts. Share your thoughts on that.
Well, it's, activists pretending to be active or being counteractive. I find that to be very problematic. It's either do what you're supposed to be doing, shut up, or sit down, get out the way. Because there's people here that are really doing shit that you're taking up space and you're just adding to the noise. Sadly enough, there are people that are paid to do that, and the word is shill. I personally have or take a large issue with pretending or plastic shaman, and I think you have a thought or two on that.
Yes, because shamanic traditions. Now, some people get into, oh, well, shaman is what they call the Siberian shamans. They call them some, or this anthropologist names them shaman. So I've had people, there's all that kind of Baroque activity around the word. But if just using a word as a descriptive of something that humans have been doing, at least certain portions of humanity, especially, the shamans in communities or the people who did that was a very specific function. It might have had cultural or, regional peculiarities, but at the heart of it was somebody who made easier contact with the causal world, because we live in the world of effect. Somebody who made easier and usually kind of general rapport with the causal world, and then could share it with the community for them to also be aware of the causal world coming into their world of effect. The shamans were actually the community watchdogs. And usually what it is they usually watch more of the causal world, because the effect world anybody could observe. So they would observe what not everybody could observe. And sometimes you get into a case, there might be one person who has that channel the best. And this is how people negotiated their way on this planet as these transcendent beings that are both animal and eternal. And there's a unique grace for kind of walking on this planet, on this earth, and they were part of it. And it was so, I don't really care what the name is. There's different names for it, but it is something that is all over humanity. And they were the ones who really were concerned with the individual and community health. And in certain cases, now I'm not saying all shamans are witch doctors, because again, we're getting into all kinds of terminologies. But the shaman was somebody who, because they could, looked out for the community from a perspective that allowed something outside of time, and it could provide useful intel. And we know of great plasma bursts that apparently bombarded this planet some thousands of years ago, when it's not so important. And we know that we see these dwellings in stone where that was the only safe place to get out of the sun. Well, they certainly didn't start building that stuff when the problem started. Somebody must have had some intel that this was going to happen.
Uh-huh.
And I'm quite sure that intel came from the shamans. whether they got it through sky watching, whatever the techniques were, the shamans have different skills. There's more than one way to look into the causal and quote unquote the future. And so but with the ability to actually go and get a certificate that where you can officially call yourself a shaman, you're certified.
Mm-hmm. Certifiable.
Yes. It really has done not just, it's actually done them a disservice, because that it is a path, that is a calling. And if people take that, I'm hoping it's because they felt that they were called. But were they actually able to enter the path, which is a lifelong path? There becomes a point on that path where you can have utility as somebody on that path. But you never stop learning. It's not a path. And I just really feel it's a shame. It's not that there's just this constant warping of the integrity and richness of our heritage of the species on this planet for tens of thousands of years, conservatively. We're underestimating it, so we can get rid of the con word. And so they get to pretend, and they get to pretend with paperwork. And paperwork is that other pretend thing that works. Because, again, there's what we could call natural laws, which are the agreements and how we are with each other. And then there's all this shit written on paper, all the pretend laws. And why are they laws? Because somebody wrote them there. Oh, we agreed. It's now official. As if like writing on a piece of paper changes how the universe works. Or the law, again, the laws of physics. I'm going to use the word laws because it communicates and not get baroque about
that. It's one of those things where the difference between you already agreeing to it and you signing a paper, there is no difference. You already put it out there. You already, what you do in spirit, what you do in energy, what you do in body, it's done. So signing a piece of paper, you've already gone through the process to bind yourself to whatever that contract is.
Mm-hmm. I think that at best, am I interrupting you? Or I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that signing of the paper is nothing.
Mm-hmm. I feel that to take a less cynical or critical side, these kind of courses probably serve as great primers of what the path might involve. And to me, if you've gone through one of those, then perhaps you can seek out a true shaman and have them. And now, if anything, if you still need further clearing to help you really get on that path, those skills that you picked up, or those awarenesses of how this whole thing works, you can now assist in your own shamanic path with the shaman. And if you have the proclivities, that you, by walking that path, clearing yourself, and if you make contact, you will know when you have gone from shamanic practices, shamanic experiences, to the ability to take what you do and serve your community, to look out for people.
That's the key word right there. Serve. People walk around thinking, I'm a shaman, I'm a shaman, I'm a shaman, like it's a title of prestige, like people should be doing things for them. A shaman is someone that serves their community. I got 3 hours of sleep between yesterday and today, and that's, probably the same or more than I got the night before. It's not a luxuriously privileged life. It's not. Um, I don't know what these people are in their head with their price sheets and their $150 soul retrievals and their
Mm-hmm.
no, it's sacrifice and servitude, and you become a death sponge and a dumping ground, and the mantle that is that you agree to be placed on you is heavy.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you used the word sacrifice. I think I might have covered it in my last Mystic Brew. I looked it up because I was looking at words like office, or fice. I'm sorry, edifice, things like that. And how, again, when we use the word sacrifice, it means usually to give up or to endure some pain. The real word of sacrifice means sacra or sacred, and fice is to make or to do. So it's to do or to make sacred. So when we sacrifice for our community, what we're doing is we're making it our service sacred. What we're bringing the sacred into things. That's what sacrifice is you're making things sacred. And to make something sacred might mean to have to jettison certain things. But don't you want sacred? What did you really give up? You've obtained the sacred. You've made sacred. You've done sacred, and you gave up something. I mean, where's the pain?
Thank you for bringing that to the table, because that, to me, that is just understood, but that's not common knowledge.
And that hurts us, because when we're using a word that means to make sacred when we're talking about a pain. So somebody has shit on our sacred by twisting and changing the meaning of a word. By turning it out, it must be painful. You owe us, you sacrifice. This is the shittiness of this world. The shittiness of this world is the systems on it. That's why this world is shitty. We're sacrificing for, in other words, they want us to make them sacred. But anyway, I'm going out there.
No, in that making sacred, there are hard choices that have to be made, and there are, I know this word will be judged, but there are judgment calls that have to be made.
Mm-hmm.
When you are seeing the causes, sometimes you got to pull it out by the root.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you are not always going to be the popular one. Again, this is why the shaman lived right on the outskirt of the village. Just as much as the community needed the shaman, the community did not always like the shaman.
Shaman scared them.
Yes.
The ones who wish they could have what they didn't work for.
And you had also made a point to make the distinction between there's someone who practices versus someone that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you have anything further on that, or if you wanted to expound a little bit.
We as transcendental beings, I think all shouldn't be aware of of the shamanic world, of what, no, an awareness of it.
Well, yeah, there should be an awareness, but not everybody should be.
And the word "should" sucks.
I don't believe that everybody should be able to dip in, like.
No. I meant like, in other words, understand what, that there's like, different worlds, cause and effect. There's connections. There's all kinds of other connections that get made on these things. I guess so where it's not so mysterious, and also so that fear gets mitigated. Because when you don't understand something, is when you start putting boogeymen in people who do things that you can't.
Agreed.
And then there are certain people like myself who have shamanic experiences, work at shamanic practice, drumming, visioning, traveling down, waiting for a totem animal, a guide animal, and more often than not being successful. And I think part has to do is because that isn't my specific path. So, but working my best, is what is suited to me, allows you and I to communicate in ways that probably might not be as powerful were I not doing this other, comfortable in doing work that isn't based on the physical world. A place that isn't just imaginary, a place that it's actually an environment. Repeated visits might unveil new things, but you have arrived at a similar place. And one of the things that allowed the shamans across the world to almost always be able to, the shamans, I'm not talking about the brujos, that they can almost, after a little bit of again, a little peculiarities of each system, will be very comfortable that they're all dealing with the same thing. So shaman is responsibility. Anything done well is a responsibility. And for certain people, carry responsibilities with relative grace and relative ease. But nothing. Life is not a straight line, and sine waves have dips, and it's really quite natural. And what can I say? As we're trying to clear away pretense, get authentic and genuine, there's been an industry built around the perennial wisdom that's now New Age, which is bits and pieces, and it's created a lot of false understanding. And I think that's really why we're getting kind of long-winded here, is because that for us to move forward, we have to get rid of our false understandings. We don't have to sacrifice them. We have to get rid of them. And I think that's what I have to say on a shamanic thing, and basically tying into the pretenders. Now, segueing, I think one of the reasons we pretend is because we don't feel safe. We feel insecure. So one of the things I want to cultivate in this community we're building is a real kind of sense of sacred space. And one of the symbols I've liked the most and gotten the best feedback, and it just happened to find itself into my an analogy, was being around a campfire and the ambiance of it. But also the fact that fire is pretty magical. And was a time, and I like the campfire because we still know what a campfire is. I can say this is what we used to do 10,000 years ago, 5,000, whatever, pick a number. But we all know what a campfire is. We've all sat around and experienced the magic. And part of that magic has to do at night is that all around you is darkness. And the fire is the illumination, and you see people's faces, but behind their faces is the darkness. So there's that mystery, but it's ooky and whatever, who knows, might come out of the darkness. In that center of that circle around that campfire, we all feel quite safe with each other. And so to try and cultivate that coming together and making, for us as humans to use our technology. And so what I'm trying to do is create a hangout of sorts, depending on, we'll see what platform we use. And where we are coming to sit by a fire. And we can all create that in our minds. I might be able to, screen share and put a fire in the general thing. But is to come together and make a sacred and safe place for us to share, and doing it in the old talking stick fashion. And that, who talks first is, has its own thing, which is not, doesn't need to get into here, but in a talking stick fashion where a person can know that they're speaking to people who want to hear them, not just listen to them, hear them, to feel with them to their best capacity, and to share visions, dreams, ahas, downloads, a place we might it's a place that we're feeling particularly stuck and want to know, is everybody else stuck in the same place? I'm feeling a generalized anxiety. Is anybody else, or is it me? And in safety, that nobody's there listening for that attack moment. Nobody's listening. People are hearing you. And the whole idea is start to bring out, like I said, our best and some of our trying moments into a sacred space, and learn through sharing, grow through sharing, and start to feel safe in our own skin so even when we leave sacred space, we don't have to engage in pretense as a default setting. There are places where pretense works sometimes, but that's being a little cunning, and you want to pick those spots carefully, because that kind of falls into coyote energy. And all you have to do is watch a few Roadrunner cartoons, and you can see what happens when coyotes scheme. So I know, and also part of the campfire was that, usually there could be somebody who could kick things off, set a mood, tell a story, get things going. And for this setting, I'm going to call this central group the fire keepers, because fire keeping was really important in the ancient traditions, and usually there was one person, but in this case there's going to be a few people keeping the fire, and then by people who request or invite and whatever, and build this and really kind of create a place where people are growing, people are connecting, they're sharing something new, because there's something we want to pull out the consciousness of the earth, and we don't, and that can be a consequence, or an effect of doing certain kinds of work. And so that's a project I'm setting out on. It could be happening in as little as 2 weeks or so, maybe, once all the particulars together. And obviously I'll maybe making an announcement, making a date, ways of contacting me so we can create this as an invite, and to see where it goes. So I've been excited. I know when I shared the idea initially with you, you were excited. Now, my friend Vern, who anybody from who watches Mod Wiz might know Vern from Voices of the Forum. Well, one of the things I was running for a while, and it might go up there again, but certain people have not been feeling well. Certain people have been moving. But Vern's the one who's from New Zealand, so he has that that kind of Englishy sounding accent. And if you have a better ear, it might sound a little Aussie but softer. And he is very excited. He started a thread at the One Truth Forum. Wait, I wonder if do I have? Let me just see if I can get the wording on it. But he's really excited, so I'm glad to bring him into what in many ways is still the Moose Lodge. Oh, it's called a live share campfire igniting is what he called this thread. And I'm hoping to find some female people to sit as firekeepers with us. So it's a work in progress, and to those who have who've been asking me about it, it will happen, and it's forming. It's going to have to break ground, but this is not something off like in any kind of real sense of the future. This is a stay tuned, and I'll be glad to let you know. And like I said, Raksha has graciously accepted to be a firekeeper. If he hadn't, I don't know I would have started this.
Aww.
So thank you, Raksha. And having her on board is such a treat for me, because he just brings the biggest loving energy. I mean, he's 6'6". He's a gentle giant, and he loves people. He really, really loves people, and he brings a different mysticism. He's coming kind of from what's called Jose Arguelles, and the Mayan calendar, the Tzolk'in, and instead of and it's based on that 1320 system instead of our clock 1260. Okay, 1260 is like 12 inches. 12 hours, okay, and then you have 60 minutes and 60 seconds to a minute. So that's the 1260. The Mayan thing is set up on I don't know what the 20 represents. I know the 13 is the lunar calendar, the 13 moons of a year. So there's kind of and each day has an energy, but that's just an energy, and he's conversant in this stuff. So it's interesting. So as we sit and as we're trying to understand, and people are bringing in data in, and we're sitting there combing it through together, we now have different ways of looking at how we're being spoken to. And I'm very excited about the process, and for the people who have agreed to be firekeepers, and more to come. But the initial one, and then Adam. Now, Adam, he's taking care of his mother, and can be called away in a moment's notice, in literally a moment. Like maybe not even a time to let us know he's been called away for a moment's notice. But I know I've asked him, and if he's available, he will be a firekeeper too, and that's another person that I am honored, and thank you, Adam. So that now I'm going to turn over kind of like our remaining part to you. To close out as you wish, and then my official closeout.
All right. We've kind of talked about a pretty broad range of subjects tonight. Everything from the concept of the reality of time to pretenders, the hero's journey, the campfire. We've made a few rabbit trails and pit stops in between. So as everyone can hopefully tell that is joining in, there's a lot going on, a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue. there are a few different communities up and running, or up and jogging or waddling at a steady pace. So I would encourage anyone that is watching to pick up one of these communities and at least listen to the dialogues and discussions. If not actively engage and participate, join in the discussion. So we'll nod and a wink. You never know what you might find and what you might learn, what you might encounter. It's a pretty exciting time for me, I'm finding, to be actively involved, because there is so much going. It's almost like a beehive, not in a negative connotation, but a beehive during a very, very active season, because there's so many moving parts and so much going on, but it's all so beautifully orchestrated and falling into place in such sync and synchronicity that it was almost as if something was leading it, orchestrating it. Like we were parts of an orchestra and there was a conductor just up there, you know. And I don't know, it's just, it's a beautiful time to be, even though there's also this, as we were talking the other night, this impending feeling of something wicked this way comes. But as with everything in life, as there should be, it falls into balance. So it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me one bit.
It's interesting how when we want to use the word beehive or hive, we almost have to like, I don't mean that.
Distance ourselves from it.
And this is another case of something sacred being made creepy. A hive, to me, the word I want to introduce for the negative hive mind would be Borg.
Check with Adam before you do that.
I'll say it here, and he can check me later.
I'll meet you out back.
But I mean, the beehive has been held as sacred. Honey is a sacred fluid. What's interesting is, okay, when ants find food, apparently they just kind of trail out and they follow it. When a bee finds a good field, how does she communicate it to her sisters? She does a dance. There's the bee dance, and in that dance, they are actually kind of giving the coordinates of where it is. But I just imagine that again, where the worker bee, get out there and get that pollen. That's the kind of the things that people are coming into. Meanwhile, when they find it, they come back and do a dance. So there's all this really negative connotation about teamwork. And you have to wonder, again, there's this negative connotation about teamwork, a community that just hums, literally. And that's fuckery.
Yes, it is.
And I think we should allow ourselves to see, again, we're humans, we're not bees, but we should be able to celebrate beeness and see wholesomeness in it and not get like, no. The Borg are this cybernetic, false, artificial, carrying out the will of the one, where the queen doesn't got a will. Her will is that the hive survives. keep on laying the eggs because the workers have relatively short lifespans. But we have to take back what's wholesome and sacred to ourselves and know it, and so we can learn from it. And I think that's my an interesting piece about the Queen, because it actually was inspired by you saying about something seems to be holding a pattern together, or like we're moving, but something seems to be holding a picture, like so that we can move in some kind of coherence. And they've done experiments with removing the queen from a hive, and you can put that queen in a test tube and fly halfway around the world, and the hive acts like nothing's happening. Whether you kill her a few feet from the hive or around the world, the moment she dies, the hive collapses.
Mm-hmm.
As long as she's alive, no matter where she is on this planet, the hive will business as usual. Population might drop, but business as usual. The moment she's dead, all coherence. They become bees without a cause. And so to me, what you were speaking of, and of course me being a Sophia person, I'm thinking about who's the queen bee here?
Mm-hmm.
Who's bringing this coherence of activity? And that's my answer.
And I was also just thinking of something, and I know it might be a little radical in thought, but we've been talking about teamwork, and then you just mentioned something about bees and teamwork, and we have this sense of basically having to distance ourselves from using the analogy of the beehive before we use the analogy of the beehive. Is there possibly a connection between the negative projection or association of the beehive, the link and the die-off of the bees? And yes, I understand there's technology, but there is a power of a global consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Just a random something to think about.
We definitely need to think about the bees. I mean, apparently somewhere I heard kind of a bee whisperer.
Mm-hmm.
And the bees are saying, you know what? We're not going to put in too much effort staying around if this is how it is. And then you can reap those rewards. I mean, and then you got this this whole thing about, they can be drone bees, drone pollinators. Oh, I can't wait to taste their honey.
Not only that, but I mean, the list of things that we consume in an already starving world.
Mm-hmm.
They're projecting between 2030 and 2040, there will not be enough bees to pollinate enough of the food source, that it will lead to the collapse of the world as we know it because of the lack of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
That's how serious the bee crisis is. The bee crisis. Another crisis. It's always crises, crises, crises. Be afraid. Ooh.
Well, with Russia banning all the GMOs and going organic, and here's what's interesting. One of the reasons they're having a little problem selling their product is because it's not certified organic. You know what I mean? They might be growing it cleaner and not using sewage sludge in their things, but which they could use if they were certified organic.
Mm-hmm.
So again, but if we keep on going the way we're going, the only place that will have bees is Russia.
Mm.
They'll have honey as a high price export.
Yep, and everybody was worried about the African bees, Africanized bees,
Mm-hmm.
and America's worst fear will be the Soviet bees. I can see the headlines now.
Well, I'm glad we came around to a little mirth to say goodnight to everybody. And so, Raksha, thank you for your time again and spending time with me and, onto the ModWiz 125 channel, giving my subscribers something to look at. I have to encourage you people that if you haven't watched the live stream of Raksha's, and I encourage the live stream because of the live chat. I'm not saying don't listen to, one of the ones that have already been done, but it's the live stream is really where you're there. It's dynamic. And so you might want to just check it out and just pop in if we're on, he's on Thursday nights at 9:00 and Sunday nights at 8:00 Eastern time. This is, so please do your own maths. And you can just drop in and say, oh, I like this or no. And but I do encourage it. I know as how I slowly came in, and for a while it was kind of like I was standing at the edge of the pool wondering just how the water was. And it wasn't until I jumped in that I found out what it was like. And I'm glad I did. I think I'll stay wet. So, Raksha, you want to have any final words for anybody?
Well, thank you for having me again as a co-host on this volume or episode of The Mystic and the Moose. Mm-hmm. And to everybody, much love and many blessings from the Moose Lodge, Raksha Moose.
And I would like to say, stay in your heart, stay half sane, and we'll see you next time.